Alright, I just finished my electric fan conversion the other day, and this fan is from a '05 Tahoe. I went to the junkyard and it was still pretty fresh in the junkyard, so I was able to get everything. And so I need to get the radiator and the fan, because the radiator is bigger than your stock Silverado. So this is a '03 Silverado. And when you first get them, don't be freaked out that the radiator mounting bolts are bigger, because your radiator support is actually set up for it. It actually has holes pre-drilled and tapped for the bigger radiator. So your original radiator for the Silverado goes to this one, and then the fan shroud goes, you still see the hole, it goes right there. So everything's moved in a little bit on the stock setup, but on the bigger radiator for the '05, the radiator is bigger, so it moves out one notch, and then the fans bolt right in to where your radiator is currently bolted into. So everything lines up, same hoses and everything. The only thing that is different is the transmission lines, and all I did was I used a pipe cutter and I cut my the lines coming out of the radiator. So at the junkyard, I cut the hoses. I left the transmission lines in the radiator, and I cut where it turns to rubber. I kept those because they go into the radiator in a different fashion. The '05 Tahoes are quick disconnect with that tool that slides in there, and the Silverado, '03 Silverado, is a bolt style, so you thread it out. So they're two different setups. So what I did is I cut the rubber hose at the junkyard, so I still had the correct fitting for this radiator. And when I got home, I used a pipe cutter, so you don't crimp it, you just cut it. You can, like a brake line cutter, you know, it spins around it. I cut the pipe coming out of the transmission, and my original transmission lines, I cut the end off of that, and all I did was I put a small rubber hose with clamp on either side, and it's perfectly fine. So did that. And the best thing you can do is, when you're at the junkyard, is get the whole harness. So here is the factory relay and fuse box for the E-fans. So I just follow the lines coming out from the bottom of the fans. So there's two plugs. I just opened up that harness and traced it all the way back and up, and separated those lines coming up. And it just comes right into this box, which is sitting on the side of the fuse box. So that comes off with you. It has one little connector, which is right here. It has a blue and green wire, and those wires go down to the ECU, which is right here. And then there's one power lead that goes to power. That powers the fuse box. So that's pretty straightforward. And the only other thing is that you have the two wires that go to the computer. When you open up this box, unplug the harness and pull out those lines. So take your time doing that, so you can have some nice factory looking and fitting electrical plugs that go right into the ECU, just like factory. And pay attention to the plugs that those come out of, but the blue wire will go into the green side. So there's two different plugs on here. One is green, one is blue, just like the wires, but I'm talking about the plugs that go into the computer. The blue wire goes into the green plug at green, the number's 33, and then the green wire goes into the blue plug at number 42. So blue 42 is where the green wire goes, and the blue wire goes to the green plug at number 33. And take your time putting those in and taking those out, and so you don't tear it up. It's especially putting it into yours. And then what you have to do is, I've had this engine dyno tuned, and only because I replaced it, so this isn't the stock engine. It's still a LS. It's a L33 opposed to the LM7. My previous engine oil pump went out and locked up, so I swapped it out and I got an L33. It's just factory, but I had to get it tuned because it runs a different tune than the original LM7 tune from the computer. So I already had the tuning credits and everything like that in there, so I had my dyno shop. I brought it back to them, and it was $50 for them to plug in, and they have to turn on their computer. So you have the plugs and everything set up for the E-fans. They just didn't have them on these cars yet. So they went in, and all they had to do was switch on the fans. It took them literally like 3 minutes in the parking lot. He just went out to the parking lot, plugged in, turned on the fans for what temperature do they kick on at. And it's not just when the temperature gets to a certain point in your AC, in your coolant, but it's also when your AC reaches a certain pressure, the fans need to kick on. So I wish I had him turn it on a little bit at a cooler temp, because I told him to do it to factory, whatever the 05 Tahoes run, which is the low fans will turn on at a temperature of 220, which I wish I had him turn it on a little bit lower, because the temperature gauge creeps up just a little bit over halfway, and then it kicks on and drops down. So it doesn't really matter, it's what it's supposed to be, but I'd rather that temperature gauge not go past halfway. But it works great. Really happy with it. So much more room, just so much cleaner, and just a great, easy setup. So can't go wrong if you just go get that factory. Just find a Tahoe 05 and up. This was a 05 Z71 Tahoe, and just snagged everything. Radiator, fan. I paid $100 for the radiator and fan, and the harness. So that wasn't bad at all. I mean, I don't even know if a radiator would be $100. You know, if I could get it for that cheap. So, yep, there you go. One last thing I forgot to mention. When I first did this, you know, I had them tune the computer first when I still had my mechanical fan on there, because obviously when you put these on, it's not going to be tuned. They're ready to kick on, so you'd overheat. So get it tuned first and have them switch everything on, and then put this on, so you don't overheat. Also, when you do this, there's two plugs, because there's two fans, and both of those plugs are identical, and they will flip-flop, but they will not work in the wrong fans. So when I first put it in, I thought I had them plugged to the right fans, but they weren't kicking on. So I was tracing wires and everything like that. I was like, what in the world? I was looking at a wiring diagram, and I had the wires backwards. So just so you know, let's see, what color is this one? The yellow and gray wire is supposed to be on the driver's side. I think the other one is blue and something, but blue and black. So blue and black goes on the passenger side. I had those flip-flopped, and it wasn't working. So I don't know why, because they should be factory. I mean, they should. I would think that they'd work on either, but they don't. So make sure you have those on the right side, or they will not kick on, and you'll be kicking yourself and freaking out. So easy enough. You can't really go wrong with setting this up. Did I notice a power difference? Maybe slightly. I mean, I already had a tune on it, and it runs a whole lot better with that tune. It was a massive difference. I'd recommend just getting a factory engine dyno tuned anyway, because they can make big changes. I was watching a dyno video recently, just a few minutes ago actually, of this tuner. He was working on it was a 2500. I don't know which engine it was, but it dynoed at, with the factory setup, it was 230 at the wheels, and then just doing a few fuel changes and trim changes, he was able to get that right up to 290 at the wheels, which is it's so big, but it was all to do with the fuel trim and everything like that. It was really eye-opening how much GM really limits the fuel dumping into these to be eco-friendly and everything. So he just opened that up and essentially let it breathe and let it drink some fuel, and it gets some really pretty good numbers. So I'd recommend getting it tuned. So for my tune, it was $550 to get it tuned out after I did my swap, and that's for HP tuner credits, which is the software that they need to use to program and to communicate and to tune the engine. And then it was, what's that, $400 after that. So it was a few hours of a dyno tune on a dyno, doing some pulls, and it was good. It was good. So I'd recommend doing that anyway. Have them tune it up and get your e-fans turned on the computer, and you can't go wrong.